The Mazda 3 enters its 6th model year for this generation for 2025. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect and the pricing and how it compares to the competition and how it stacks up to that competition these days, even though it's a pretty dated vehicle. And so, yes, as far as the styling, well, I think that is one thing that has held up very well over these past 6 years. This still looks so modern, so fresh, and especially here in this Soul Red Metallic, which is a classic Mazda color that just still hits perfectly these days. Just looks so good, especially here in direct sunlight. I mean, man, it's such a stunning red. And you know, the styling, again, just I think it's really impressive. A vehicle that's this dated, usually you have to do refreshes to keep things looking fresh. There's been no refresh. They haven't changed the exterior styling at all, and they didn't need to. It still just looks so good here. And the one new thing for 2025 is that you can now get this hatchback in the base trim, and so that's one thing you weren't able to get in the past. So it's great they're opening up the availability of the hatch here, and I really like the hatch. I did a full review on this 6 years ago when it came out. I spent a week with the turbo versions over the past several years, but this is my first time actually getting to sample in length this naturally aspirated lower preferred version with front wheel drive of the Mazda 3. So I mean, at this one, you know, coming in under $30,000, a really nice premium little vehicle, and I think it still looks great on the outside. I especially love the back end here for the hatchback, so sleek with those taillights. But let's check out the inside, which is also still very impressive. And yes, it is very nice in this interior, and even, you know, again, 6 years later, still is the most luxurious feeling one by far, in my opinion, but might not be the best. My big caveat is the space in here, which I'll get to more in a few minutes. But as far as up front here, you know, it's so nice. Everything is padded and soft touch materials, even down by your knees here, which a lot of high-end vehicles that are larger, more expensive, whatever, still don't even do this. And it's so nice for resting your knee on for long drives when you have the cruise control on or whatever. You know, even the leatherette feels a little more premium than the average leatherette from, you know, other brands. I mean, it is just so nice. And again, this is just a mid-grade preferred trim. This is not one of the top trims. And so anyway, as far as the seats, so one of the nice upgrades here for the preferred is that's the first one that gets you into these leatherette seats that are also heated. They are also power adjustment, and they also have memory. I wish they were perforated, but aside from that, I mean, they are really comfortable seats. They have lumbar adjustment here, and they've been so comfortable to live with here this week. I really enjoy these seats. The steering wheel is also so nice. Again, just beautifully leather wrapped, has, you know, the nice buttons here on it. Just simple and clean though, compared to so many other competitors having a million buttons on their steering wheel. I love how simple this is. And then gauge is also nice and simple. They're still sticking with the analog thing here, you know, not going and just blasting a screen in there like you see from many other competitors. And I mean, especially since a lot of people are getting burned out by screens, I think that this is one of the things that was smart for them to not change. We do have a little like 7-inch display in the middle there, but you know, the analog tack and the other gauges there on the right, I think is a really nice touch. You can also get a head-up display in the higher trims. You don't get that here in this one though. Coming over to the middle here, also because we're not in a higher trim, we only have the 8.8-inch screen here, and it's also not a touch screen because the touch-enabled stuff that you get with wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto in the top turbo trims, that isn't available here in this. So there's no touch-enabled functions for this. It is all still using this controller wheel. You do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it is wired here for this smaller screen. So it's unfortunate. Not everyone needs to have all-wheel drive. Not everyone needs to have a turbo, and to lock everyone out of these top features unless they go for big horsepower just seems kind of strange to me. Yeah, I think there's certainly a niche of people that I think would want to have all the bells and whistles without all the extra power, but anyway, that's the way they decided to play it. And so as a result, this also has no satellite radio, which is also another sore spot for me. So your entertainment options are, again, plugging in your phone for CarPlay, not a big deal, but just, you know, an extra step, or dealing with AM, FM, or Bluetooth streaming, or, you know, USB stick or something like that. But, you know, a little bit less entertainment-wise there, and again, it's going to be a little bit more of a hassle to deal with the CarPlay not having the touch-enabled stuff like you get in the other higher Mazdas. Not the end of the world, but, you know, not ideal. Most of the competitors have a far easier to use touchscreen, but I do love this Mazda infotainment system. I used to hate it, and I still think that, again, for smartphone integration, having the touch is what you need, but for Mazda's own menus, using this controller wheel is so quick and easy. It is very simple, and the favorites button makes it great to save whatever you want to save, whether it's, you know, radio stations or addresses, phone numbers, whatever. You pull those frequently used things up there with the save button, and it is wonderfully simple to navigate. I really do love this, and I'm glad. I think with the higher trims, again, having that touch stuff makes it basically perfect. And so I do really love it. I also love this. Also still just has the base 6-speaker stereo. You can get a Bose system in the carbon, and then in those turbos once again. And the Bose system is fantastic for sure, but this 6-speaker system is also great. It also has the signature thing where they decided not to put any speakers in the lower parts of the doors, and that gets rid of all the rattle you get at higher volumes. And it's so clean and crisp. Instead, you have speakers in the footwell for the up front here, and as well as the little A-pillar one. But this regular non-Bose stereo is really actually pretty good. I'm happy I got to finally experience the lower stereo. Coming down, you have, again, just wonderfully simple, just a few solid buttons here, really nice knobs here for changing a few things, but it does everything you need to do. And, you know, love the way they set that up. Now, coming down, one other area where this kind of falls short of the competitors is you don't have a wireless charging pad. I think you can option one in as a dealer installed kind of thing. But this doesn't have that. You just have a big bin there and your 2 cup holders, which also are not in the best spot because if you have tall drinks, they're going to run into these climate controls. So, you know, there's some packaging problems, I think, with this car a little bit. You know, that's one of them in addition to the, you know, space constraints. But otherwise, you know, you do have a center armrest, which is really softly padded. It's like memory foam in here. I love how soft that is. And anyway, the one annoying thing is you have to slide it back and then up in order to get into this. But once you do, you'll see a decent sized space, you know, for a vehicle like this. And also now in 2025, we have the USB-C jacks here in addition to the regular power outlet there. Par for the course as far as storage for something like this. But the thing that is not par for the course is moving on to the back seat. The back seat is just too small. Up front here, it's a little tighter than most of the competitors as well. Not the end of the world, but the back seat is really tough. You know, I'm only 5'9". Me sitting behind myself, I have maybe an inch of legroom to spare. It's tight, and that's even with the little cutout in the seat, and again, me only being 5'9" sitting up front here. If you had someone over 6 feet tall sitting as the driver, forget about using the back seat. Like, just completely forget about it. It's just too small these days. I think honestly in 2019 it was a little too small even then, but that is the one area this vehicle has aged horribly. Now the Civic has gotten bigger. It's got a nice sized back seat. Basically every competitor has a bigger back seat than this does, and you know, I think that that's really the one thing they need to fix for the next generation. And I think that's why they need to have a next generation come sooner rather than later. Otherwise, I'd say keep with this as long as they can. But I think that this size is probably a deal breaker for a lot of people. It's just too small. And even, you know, we have our forward-facing car seat with our toddler here. And I mean, my wife and even me, you know, me sitting in that seat, you know, it has to be slid all the way forward to make it usable for the car seat, honestly. And, you know, then the front passenger has absolutely no legroom to spare. Like, my knees are in the glove box. So, you know, it's just too small. And unfortunately, there is no other sedan alternative for Mazda. There's no Mazda 6 anymore. So this is it. You know, your only option is to go up to an SUV if you want to stick with Mazda and you need more space. And also, hatch is another disappointment. You know, I mean, it's fine. I'd say it's a bigger hatch than the Toyota Corolla hatch. So, you know, there's a little win there, but it's far smaller than the Civic hatch, which is really nice and deep and a lot bigger. This is just, you know, a little too small, I think. You can also get the sedan for these still. That also is a smaller trunk than most of the competitors as well. So no matter which body style you pick, you're going to just have less cargo space, less backseat space. And so it's tough. You know, I love the style of this vehicle, and I do like small cars, but, you know, Civic's nice and small as well, and it's just packaged better. And I think that's the bottom line here. You also, for those backseat passengers, by the way, they have no air vents, no power outlets or anything. They have full down center armrests there with cup holders, but that's pretty much it, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, again, this is really luxurious if you're up front and, you know, you don't have to worry about the back seat or the trunk ever. I think this is fine, you know, as long as you're, you know, not needing the most amount of space possible, but that's the only thing. Otherwise, this interior is still fantastic. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Mazda 3 just has the usual Mazda key they've used for several years now, just a few buttons there on the side. Otherwise, nice and clean and simple, just like the rest of the car. But of course, it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off here in the Mazda 3 Hatch. So the first thing that you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing that I love about these things is just the simplicity of the way it responds to your commands. There's no guessing games with this vehicle. There's no weird responses. It's just all predictable, normal, and exactly what you want. It's a naturally aspirated engine paired to a regular 6-speed torque converter automatic, and instant throttle response that's predictable and normal. brakes also nice and responsive, and have a good amount of resistance to them. So they do take a little more muscle than maybe some of the competitors, but it's really nice to use, and I absolutely love the way they set that up. The transmission always was happy to give me a downshift and be responsive, even with just 6 gears. It never felt like it was, outdated, even though that's kind of like an, simpler kind of transmission these days with everyone going for more gears or CVTs or whatever. But this works really well. It's tuned very well. No complaints. And visibility is also really good here in the Mazda 3, with one caveat as well. Great visibility forward. A-pillars are nice and thin. Mirrors off onto the doors. All, really good. View out of the back is also really good here with just your usual hatch kind of visibility here. Now, the one thing a lot of people complain about with these is the fact that you have a really thick C-pillar area there. And it's true, it is pretty thick, and at the right angle, if you have some kind of weird intersection where you got to really look over your shoulder a lot, you're going to maybe have a little bit of a blind spot there. But I honestly had no issues with it at all. And for me, driving this vehicle around all week, no complaints with it. It hasn't bothered me. We also have all the usual safety tech. It's all standard now here for the Mazda 3. So blind spot monitoring is standard, rear cross traffic alert, all those things that you can rely on if that is an issue. But for me, it wasn't even an issue anyway. But anyway, other things here, just cruising on a little back road here at some slower speeds. It's really quiet and smooth. They did such a good job too. It was a little bit of a controversial thing because they switched from a last generation having a multi-link independent rear suspension to a torsion beam, simpler suspension setup in this version, and a lot of people were worried that was going to hurt the handling. I don't think it really does, but stay tuned for my thoughts on the back road here in a minute. But as far as the ride quality, it is so smooth, so comfortable. It really does pair well with this luxurious interior with a very luxurious ride. It's also a little quieter, I'd say, than most of the competitors, especially some of them like Corolla. I feel like it's double the road noise in a Corolla compared to this. We're still dealing with a compact sedan, so don't expect it to be insanely quiet, but it's better than everything else in this segment from a refinement standpoint, in my opinion. But I'm gonna put it into the sport mode here. Let's turn down on this back road, see how it does. Here we go. It pulls really nicely. That's one of the other great things about the Mazda 3 is it is the punchiest of the bunch here, outside of the new Civic Hybrid. But we have 191 horsepower, 186 pound-feet of torque from this 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine. It has cylinder deactivation, direct injection, and it really does well. This motor has been proven it holds up well over time. It's been in use in Mazdas for quite a while now, and it seems to be a really solid motor. And 0 to 60 is about 7 seconds or so for these, and it's enough power that especially in the wet, I had to be careful because it wanted to spin the front wheels for sure. And so if you are someone who deals with weather, going with the all-wheel drive is not a bad idea. Although the thing is, all-wheel drive is only available in the Carbon and then the turbo trims. The Carbon is a little bit of a sportier look. That's the only one with the naturally aspirated engine these days that gets the all-wheel drive option, unfortunately. You used to be able to get all-wheel drive on lower trims, but I guess they just figured, their marketing research told them that this makes sense to only offer it on the high trims now. It's a little bit of a shame because it means now you still only have Subaru and Impreza really offering a cheap all-wheel drive option in this segment. But I also love steering as a really nice weight too. Sport mode I think maybe tweaks it a little bit, but it's even in regular normal mode, it's just so, again, nicely weighted and gives you some feeling through it, but not so much that it's overboard or too heavy. But everything about this, is really well done. I think the only one that comes close is the Honda Civic, with that also kind of having really good feeling inputs and just a car that feels good to drive, and is a little bit, cut above the rest that are just fine. But like this and the Civic are the ones where I'm like, yeah, like it's actually, kind of gratifying to use, even just basic things like the turn signals. But anyway, coming up some corners here that I always take, let's see how the Mazda 3 handles them. So again, nothing crazy. We got like, 205 wide tires here. But it's, it's pretty flat and does a really good job. This one also, being the non-turbo, has the advantage of being a little bit lighter weight. So these weigh just over 3,100 pounds, and it does a really good job on these corners here. Nice and flat. Does everything you want it to do. There's really not much more to say. It is totally fine. And again, for a regular buyer, it's gonna be totally fine. But even if you're an enthusiast and you're considering like the manual transmission version of the Mazda 3 Hatch that is still available, thankfully, if you're worried that maybe the suspension is not set up to be sporty enough, don't have any complaints. I don't think you're gonna worry even as an enthusiast. It'll be fine. Of course, there's always the aftermarket if you want more, but it is completely fine. And if you just want, sophisticated, nice daily driver, that's really where this shines. And I think, again, it's great they offer that manual to toss a little bone to the enthusiasts who don't want to go all the way up to those turbo all-wheel drive ones with the automatic. And so, yeah, it just feels really nice to drive. And, even these roads here, a little bit rougher, have some potholes and, a little bit of a rougher pavement here. You might hear a little bit of road noise, but it's really not bad. And so yeah, they do such a good job with the driving dynamics here in the Mazdas. All right, so now out on the highway here in the Mazda 3 Hatch, it's a really nice cruiser once again. And once we get off this expansion joint here, we can talk about the how quiet it is in here. Nice and quiet, at least on a smoother highway. But we also are coming up some corners here. We have in southwestern Pennsylvania on these highways, and I do have the adaptive cruise control system on. It does have lane keep assist as standard. All of those things are standard here in this. But what I can say is, Mazda's system is definitely one. I'm not going to show it now because we have some busy traffic here as it's approaching rush hour. But what I can say is that the lane keep assist system definitely allows you to go over the lines. It'll definitely nudge the wheel and tries to get your attention and stuff, but it always gives priority to the driver. And so it's just not going to be one of these ones that does a lot of the steering for you like you see from some of the others that this competes with that are a little bit more assertive with the steering assistance. This one doesn't do that quite as much, but still is a really nice cruiser out here on the highway. And the great thing is you do get all the other safety tech as standard. So you have blind spot monitoring once again, lane keep assist, you have rear cross traffic alert, automatic emergency braking, everything you can think of is pretty much standard. And that's basically the way most of the other competitors are these days. Basically everyone has agreed all these things should really be standard, and so it's great that we have all that here. So you don't have to make sure you check option boxes or get the right trim in order to get the safety tech that you're looking for. So all that's covered, keeps it nice and simple. Fuel economy for the Mazda 3 with the front wheel drive configuration here is going to be 27 mpg in the city, 35 on the highway, and 30 combined. And in my driving, which was mostly around town, suburban, 35 mile per hour kind of roads with a little bit of highway mixed in, I've been averaging 27.2 mpg. So I'm hitting that city number, which is pretty good because typically in my driving around here, I get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating. So I'm hitting the city rating. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. As far as how it compares to the competition, fuel economy wise, there are certainly better fuel economy options out there. Mazda still does not offer a hybrid for the Mazda 3, and there is no better way to get better fuel economy in these, unfortunately. So this is gonna be about as good as it gets. And even some of the non-hybrid competitors do manage to get some higher fuel economy. So it is what it is. Again, a little bit of a more premium fuel in this, so I guess you pay a little bit more for gas. But again, it's hitting the ratings, so to me, no issues there. But the last thing to really mention is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing goes, for the hatchback here now, since again you can't get it for the base version, they start just over $26,000, like $26,135, and the hatchbacks do charge an extra $1,000 more over the sedan, unfortunately. So be talking about 25 grand if we were talking about the sedan here. 26 though is where these start, and again we have to keep in mind the competition and how things have risen price wise. And then this one for the preferred, again not a loaded trim or anything, but just for the preferred, this one is 29,600 and change. So this comes in under 30 grand here, but it's pricey for, again, not being fully loaded or anything like that. But again, you got to look at the competitors. So let's look at the competitors. I think the best competitor to this vehicle, the strongest one, is the new Civic Hybrid. That gives you actually 10 more horsepower, 9 technically more horsepower than what you get here. And this gives you 50 mpg and gives you basically everything else that this does, plus the ease of a touchscreen, which you don't have here in this. So the Civic does lose for, I'm talking Sport Hybrid is the comparable trim to this for the most part. You lose out on the leatherette, so that is the one thing you lose, but otherwise it matches this pretty well. If you're okay with cloth, you get more power, way more fuel efficiency, for about the same price. Those come in again right under 30 grand for that trim as well. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money, you can go for an Elantra. Those are about $28,000, and those are, you know, very nicely equipped as well. They give you the big touchscreen and all that, but you know, it's just not as nice on the inside. I mean, that is just plastic everywhere still. A far cry from the premium materials here in this, but again, you have more space in that. Same goes for the Civic as well, but you are down on power for that Elantra as well. But you know, you save a little bit of money, you can get that and get similar features. There's also one of the more interesting competitors these days is the new Kia K4, which is a lot bigger now. It's a new generation vehicle that replaces the Forte, and that gives you like the double 12.3 inch screens. That gives you, for that GT line version, 190 horsepower from a turbocharged engine, and those also come in right around like $29,000 or so for one of those. And you know, that also is going to be offered with a hatch here sometime in 2025, I believe. And so that could be one of the strongest competitors. I've not driven that one. I'm hoping to check out the K4 soon, but you know, in the meantime, it's definitely one worth considering, I think, because again, it's so nice and roomy, really impressive tech, and does, you know, since it's a next generation kind of interior, gives you more premium feeling stuff inside. And, you know, it'll be a little closer to this. Might still not be quite as nice. I still think, you know, the only one that comes close to this is the Civic, with it having metal knobs and really nice feeling buttons and all that. But, you know, from a tech standpoint, you know, that blows everything else out of the water with those big touchscreens and all that. There's also the Nissan Sentra, which is a nice choice as well. Those unfortunately don't save you a whole lot of money. They come in about $28,750 or so. That also gives you less power. Also very plush though. I think that's the only other one that gives you padded knee areas, for example. And you do have like wireless Apple CarPlay in that, which is nice. And you know, a nice vehicle, a little bit more space than this as well. But you are down on power in that Sentra. And the big thing about Sentra is it doesn't do great in crash testing. The same thing goes for the Jetta. That's why the Jetta can make sense, but the Jetta, you know, is also on the lower end of the spectrum as far as, you know, crash testing. You know, same thing goes for Sentra. Whereas the Mazda, it is a top safety pick plus from the IIHS. The only one that can match that is the current Honda Civic. Outside of that, there's a lot of others that are top safety picks, but not top safety pick plus. And even this does perform better in even the newest test compared to the Civic, which still, you know, has the same rating, but this is even still scoring a little higher than that, with even the brand new, hard to pass, moderate overlap updated test that really judges back seat safety and seatbelt safety for the rear seat occupants, for kids especially. This vehicle, again, being 6 years old, it got a good rating in that test. And there's some brand new stuff and some bigger and more luxurious and more expensive stuff that has failed that test or gets much lower marks than this does. This is a very safe little vehicle, and if safety is something that, you know, is important to you, Civic is also very good, but this is the best from a safety standpoint. You know, for something that's this small in this segment, you can't do better than the Mazda 3 as far as safety goes. So, you know, for some people that carries a lot of weight, for others they don't care. And again, if you don't mind that much, you know, Jetta and Sentra, you know, do offer some value there. And the last one to mention, of course, is Corolla. Those come in about $29,000, so also undercuts this. Again, less power, less of a higher safety score. You do have a nice big touchscreen in those now. I believe it's like a 10-inch touchscreen in the Corolla for 2025. So, you know, it's nice. It'll run forever. I think the Mazda also has a very good track record, but, you know, Corollas are famous for their durability, and that does also offer a hybrid version and an all-wheel drive version. I tested one of those about a year ago. Very nice, but again, simpler kind of interior, not nearly as luxurious as this. It does have a little bit more space, but, you know, not a whole lot more, honestly. And so Corolla is just kind of a weaker competitor these days. It's also very dated, similar age to this vehicle. I think Corolla just hasn't kept up as well with the interiors of all these rather brand new vehicles out there these days. But overall, yeah, I really like the Mazda 3. I think it's a really solid little car. I still love it just as much as I did 6 years ago, which I think is a testament to, you know, just how good it was to begin with, and how well, you know, Mazda really set this vehicle up for long-term, you know, success. And so, yeah, that's all of my thoughts here on the Mazda 3. Still recommended as long as the space isn't a deal breaker. If this thing had another few inches of legroom and a little bit more rear hatch or rear trunk space, I still think this would be best in class and would be my pick. But as it is now, again, cramming the family in here wasn't comfortable this week. I'd have to go with one of the bigger competitors as much as I like the Mazda 3. But that's all of my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Mazda for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.